Petroleum Institute says we have, let's say 15 trillion barrels of reserves around the world. Okay, and that's probably off by a factor of at least 3 to 5. Because countries like Saudi Arabia, countries like Kuwait, because I had a 10-year relationship with, Venezuela, all don't cheat the numbers, but they downplay the numbers. Okay, the Aramco, which is Saudi Arabia basically, tried to go public for 25 years and couldn't go public. They went to NASDAQ, they went to New York Stock Exchange, Hong Kong, Beijing, etc. Nobody would take them public because to go public, they had to have a reserve report, meaning they have to have, by Ryder Scott, one of the big engineering companies, they say how much oil you really have, how much is proved producing oil. Nobody, they wouldn't produce those numbers. So finally, Saudi, the kingdom, decided, well, we'll go public in Saudi, so we'll take it ourselves. Nobody participated. So they made all government employees mandatory that they had to buy 50 shares or 350 shares out of their own paychecks to get it away. And so they only sold or took 2 or 3% of Aramco public, and they had more than $1 trillion valuation. If you knew, this audience knew, how many barrels of oil reserves were really in the world, in my estimation, oil would be 5 cents a barrel.
That's a great
because
point.
there's 10, 20, 30 times more oil reserves, and they keep coming up with secondary and tertiary methodologies to extract the oil. For example, the North Sea, Bob Dyke, who was my partner when I went public many years ago, he founded the North Sea in Argyll in 79. And he said at that time it was only supposed to last 20 years. So by the year from 79 to 2000, North Sea should be done. Well, the North Sea still got 50, 60, 70 years left because of all the oil reserves that are still there.
Great point.
Okay, and so, but those cars, you wouldn't want. Maybe, I normally say you wouldn't want your wife driving that car. Maybe you would, but maybe. The guys were but you guys will have them.
Morgan & Morgan was here.
Oil is producing the most. So Matt charts on the podcast for a while. So look at this. These are the biggest oil reserves in the world. That one's production. It doesn't show that 1 second. So biggest oil reserves in the world. You know, U.S. is way down at the bottom there. But then if you go to production, U.S. is producing the most. So imagine if we got the full potential of oil production out of those largest reserves in the world. Like, there's an abundance of oil that we're not using.
You got to be kidding me. So go back. So look at this. Venezuela's number 1 in the amount it's sitting on.
Yeah.
But production, you don't see it in the top 10. Go to the next one, Rob. Look in production. Yeah. They're nowhere in the top 8. So what does that mean, though? What does that mean?
They're holding back.
You need a working power plant to run a refinery.
But then, is it holding back, or is it because the U.S. has put sanctions on Venezuela?
Both.
Which one's a bigger pressure?
Well, the sanctions just started. So Venezuela's been doing this for 30 years. So the sanctions just started.
Why would they hold on to it, though? Why would they hold them back?
Because they know that someday, irrespective of what Elon Musk says, someday that oil is going to be worth its weight in gold, pun intended. But the big money, the guys like you, they're investing in water. That much water will cost more than a barrel of oil 15, 20 years from now. The big money, this is what they're investing in. I know not what this podcast is about, but I mean, and it's proved producing reserves are the ones that they normally use. But in Saudi Arabia, it costs about $1.40 to get a barrel of oil from under the ground to the surface.
$1.40.
$1.40. Call it $2. Call it $2. Okay. And East Texas, it costs about $50. In the Gulf of America, formerly the Gulf of Mexico, it costs about $120. In the North Sea, it costs about $200. And it's $1.40.
How's that possible?
Because you can pick up the oil with your hand. When J. Paul Getty founded oil in Saudi Arabia back in the late 20s, early 30s, he was looking for water. And there's this ugly black shit that kept coming out, the Bedouins out there. What is this stuff? And then of course, he got rich, and then he wouldn't pay ransom for his kid or grandson. I can't remember.
Nothing. He wouldn't pay.
Oh, and he told me.
They set him back with one ear eventually.
Yeah. And then he told him, I got 11 more grandkids. So you got a lot of people to cut their ears off of with this comment.
Savage.
Yeah. He had a payphone in his house.
And quickly on that too, and tell me if you would agree with this. I think the scariest thing in the world for oil companies is oil going below $60 a barrel. So I think that oil,
65 is where they make money in U.S.
Yeah, 65 to 80 is their comfort zone. So I think they have a vested interest too in withholding that oil and not opening up Venezuela's oil.
I got something done.